Hi girls, I want to talk to you a bit about forming the narrative for your project. I want to talk a little bit about what the pieces of a narrative are and how it applies to what you will be doing. So the things we're going to talk about are kind of represented in this graphic. They're the different elements of a story. So you start off with the exposition, and which is basically you're explaining the elements of the story and who the characters are and what time frame you're in. You have the rising action, which is building up to the central conflict. You have the climax, which is when the conflict takes place and the story starts coming to an end. You have the falling action where the pieces start to come together and things start to get resolved. And the denouement, or the resolution, is the very end where everything starts making sense for the character and for the reader again. And I'm also in the end going to talk about how the elements relate to your project specifically. So first, you have the exposition. Now you probably noticed the picture. I'm going to give examples along the way using Harry Potter because it's a very clear-cut as many clear-cut examples of all of the different elements of a story. So the exposition is the basic background information that you have to understand the story. You establish who your protagonist and antagonist are. Now your protagonist is your main character. So you need to give them a name, you can explain as much about them as you want, but you need to establish who they are. And the antagonist is either the person, so in Harry Potter's case it's Lord Voldemort, or it's the event that's in conflict with the protagonist. So some of you may choose to write about what it was like for a person in your tribe to meet an early explorer or to possibly see early explorers. Those aren't specific people per se, they could just talk about it in general, and that would be an event, which would count as your protagonist. Now, the exposition ends as soon as the moment of conflict occurs. So you can spend a paragraph on the exposition. J.K. Rowling spends a whole lot of time on the exposition in the very first book. She talks about his birth, and then it goes into time with his aunt and uncle, and all of a sudden he ends up at Hogwarts for some strange reason. So it depends on your story. Now you only have a max of 3 pages, so use them carefully. So just to recap, Harry Potter series, the protagonist is Harry Potter. The antagonist is Lord Voldemort. The basic conflict is Voldemort wants to erase all muggles and take over the magical world, and Harry's the only one that can do it. So, and it's set in present-day England. Pretty basic stuff. Now the rising action. This begins the moment the central conflict takes place. Now in Harry Potter, the rising action technically begins as soon as Lord Voldemort marks Harry. So it begins technically when he's a baby, but as far as you, the reader, are concerned, it starts whenever Harry starts using magic and gets accepted into Hogwarts and he starts figuring out his past. So it's a little cloudy there. Yours doesn't have to be so complex. But basically, the action starts. Now, in the rising action, you also have secondary conflicts. So this is where you start seeing Harry's trouble with Malfoy. Harry, he's friends with Ron, and Ron's kind of goofy, and then he's also friends with Hermione, who's a big nerd and hasn't friends with anybody, and he has issues with Snape, and does Dumbledore like Harry? Does Dumbledore not like Harry? All of the other conflicts that happen in Harry Potter that make it a dynamic story are going on in the rising action. And pretty much they reoccur in every single book, so you can see them throughout the whole series. But in general, so Lord Voldemort is the antagonist, and he tries to keep Potter from achieving his goal, which every single book, except for the last one, Lord Voldemort is able to escape death. So you have this rising action. Is Lord Voldemort going to die? And the answer is always yes or no, and the story ends. So the climax is the turning point. So this is when the central conflict is determined. So which way is it going to go? It makes a change for the better or for worse. So every time, and at the end of all of the books, it was better for Harry, in the first 6 because Harry got to live another day. It was better for Voldemort because he had another chance to survive. But except for the last one, it was worse because Harry had to find another way to kill him. So this is where the reader figures out, and you as the author tell the reader if things are going to continue going badly and it comes to an end, or if things are going to get better. So every single time Harry is engaged with Voldemort, something unfortunate happens, or he is constantly with people that make his life miserable. The climax occurs every time Harry's fate is determined. So every time both of them survive another day or don't, that's when their fate is determined. So if you are doing something on, one of the questions was on women's roles and their attitudes in the tribe. Maybe you're in a tribe that doesn't necessarily respect women as much as, our culture does, and you use the information that you're talking about, and maybe the girl all of a sudden decides, she wants to start her own band and go off and live on her own, or she meets up with early explorers and decides to take their chances with them. That would be a climax, whether something becomes better or worse for your character. Now, the falling action is when things start to unravel and where the story starts to come to an end. It doesn't come to an end immediately. The conclusion is the next step, but basically this is where all of the other little sub conflicts are resolving themselves. So if Harry and Ron are having a fight, this is where it ends. If something is going wrong with Snape, this is where Harry finds out why Snape was being such a pain. So it heads towards conclusion, but you don't actually see the very end of the story yet. So my example is the time where Harry sets out on his quest to find all the Horcruxes in the last 2 books. This is the falling action in the entire Harry Potter story. So this is his last chance. He knows it. This is where everything is coming together. He's either going to find them and Voldemort will be gone, or he won't find them and things will end in a different way. So finally you have the resolution. So this is the actual end of the drama. So the conflict is completely resolved. So in the last book, Voldemort's gone. At the end of all the other books, the conflict that he was having with Voldemort is over. So the picture here is in the one where Harry has to finds that Elder Wand, so the magic wand that was made by one of the 3 brothers, and he snaps the wand in half so that nobody else can use it again. So this is his resolution. He's like, this piece of magic is over. It can't be used against us anymore. So the final resolution in the whole story is when the battle between Voldemort and Harry finally ends. So it's when Harry eventually wins. Now, with your project, I'm going to take these one at a time. So the first one, what would it be like for a tribe member to encounter a European explorer for the first time? So you need to, figure out if your tribe actually encountered Europeans or not. If they didn't, probably shouldn't do this one. But your tribe member has to have a name. You need to clearly identify an appropriate reaction to the Europeans from that tribe. So if your tribe did a lot of trade, or you found stories of the Europeans being embraced, your story needs to mirror that. You cannot do something opposite of the character of the tribe that you are studying. But if your tribe is dwindling and they come in contact with them and, they end up, being disease-ridden several months later and the tribe gets wiped out, you can tie it in. So you need to decide, what is the conflict of the European explorers? Are they going to embrace them? Are they not? If they do, what ends up happening? Is it a good thing for the tribe? Is it a bad thing for the tribe? And kind of just bring it to an end. The second one, what would it be like at a major tribal gathering as a young warrior? So again, you need to figure out what it would be like for a young warrior, and if there was some kind of special ceremonies or events that they had to engage in order to become a warrior, or what it was like after he became a warrior. Was life really tough? What did he go after? What were the tribe's major enemies? You need to have something that's realistic, and you can take it in multiple different directions. You just need to make sure that your character is representative of your tribe, and you cannot be stereotypical or embellished. Now lastly, what are the duties and attitudes of a woman in your tribe? In class we talked about several different points of view. Some tribes respected women to the point that they had a whole lot of say in the way the tribe works, the government, the family life, etc. You need to figure out if the attitudes of that particular woman, if she respected that, if she enjoyed it, if it was a daunting task. It sounds really cool to us to sit there and go, all right, she got to vote on the elders that go to decide, whether they go to war, to trade, or to move to a different hunting ground. But what if the woman what if it created a lot of anxiety for her? You need to think about something reasonable to put yourself into kind of her shoes. So I'm gonna let you think on that one. I'm just gonna say there's all different kinds of women, and you need to pick a woman that you think is representative of that tribe and see what her attitudes are. And the same thing with the other two. There's all different kinds of people. You can pick a character that's developed as you wish, but you really need to just make sure you don't do anything that's stereotypical and deviates from the research. So I hope that this helped to answer some of the questions you guys have been having, or kind of helps you find some direction. I'm going to post a discussion board. If you have any questions, I'd like you to pose them to the group so that all of us can see the answers, because odds are really good that you're not the only one that has a question.